situate yourself in like your career for us. Like what's the thing that, or what are a couple of things that you're like super proud of or happy about that you did in the past year? And like, what's at least one thing you're looking forward to doing musically in 2025?
This past year was a weird one. I've kind of taken a bit of I took a bit of a jump like at the back end of 2023 into like properly exploring my own like solo music and like really venturing into production and producing drum and bass. And I really kind of took the plunge into that. So a lot of last year was kind of like trying to build that up. And drumming wise, still did some really cool stuff. Went back to Montreal with Alfa, which was lit. We played out there a couple years ago. And then yeah, they asked him back, and we did like a proper club performance this time. So we did Club Soda, and sold that out, and that was a lot of fun. I went out to China as well. We did a little mini, like did a few days out in China, kind of did a mini tour, and that was hella fun. There was just kind
Where
of
did you go
like,
in China?
We went to Beijing and Shanghai, and it was like it wasn't like whistle stop, but it was kind of like day on, day off, and
Right.
But yeah, man, it was super nice. I really liked Shanghai. Beijing was a bit manic, and like it was just a bit. I was just like hella overstimulated all the time. Whereas kind of Shanghai was a bit more calm, and I don't know. It was cool, man, and the people out there are like super cool. And you know, despite a lot of like, I guess, restrictions their culture has, they were like just super accommodating and like and lovely. So that was really cool. I signed someone's arm. That was so funny. Someone just comes up after one of the shows, is like, sign this, and I was like, sign what? And they just held their forearm out. I felt like I was like Voldemort putting like a dark mark on someone's arm. I was just like, just signed, just forcing these big like letters down some.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah.
Hopefully you had a Sharpie and not a ballpoint. You don't want to accidentally stab someone.
Quill pen. Just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
They were gonna get it tattooed later.
Honestly, I would hate to have that tattoo. I'd pay for it to get removed. But yeah, that was sick. I played at Glastonbury for the first time, which was really cool. Did a few sets out there with this amazing artist that I play for. We met playing for Alfa together. He's a trumpet player. This guy called Johnny Woodham. He does his own solo stuff called J Sphinx, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of my most consistent project. We just recorded his next EP a few weeks back. That will come soon. But we played Glasto, which is just a manic week, but was just like so much fun trying to, I guess, soak that all in, and like, you know, just having a good time with like some of my best friends, as well as doing what we love together. You know, it's a very wholesome trip. So yeah, man, I did some cool stuff last year, but it was mainly about building up the solo music, like getting releases out, getting people playing my music, getting my own sets and stuff. Kind of like properly delving into this like electronic music kind of world. Wasn't like challenging, but it was super fun and like different experience. It's been cool to kind of do something a bit separate from drumming, and then this year is all about elevating the music, keeping that pushing, but then starting to bring the two together. So starting to implement like live performance within sets, and like, you know, if I could show up to a rave with a little drum kit and blast out jungle for an hour, then that'd be super cool. So just trying to put things into motion whilst also keeping everything going along. But yeah, I just think the kind of the focus shift has been the main thing. The focus shift from just being like not even like a session guy, but just doing other people's stuff. That kind of focus shift to doing a lot more of my own stuff has kind of been the main thing I've worked on over the past year. So yeah, man, yeah, it's been fun. It's been different, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
What's interesting about hearing you talk about it is that it's refreshingly creatively guided. Like I don't hear very much talk about getting this many fans or getting on the cover of this thing or that thing. It's all mainly just like, hey, this would be really cool to do. That would be really cool to do. And yeah, I guess my question is, do you feel like the scene that's generating all the connections and all the people and all the creative energy, what was the origin of that? Did that originate in London, or where did you make some of the primary connections with these people who you can just collab with now?
A mixture, really. I mean, for me, everything kind of started to happen when I was really young. It's the whole thing of like cause and effect, really. So like I was super fortunate to win the UK Young Drummer of the Year back in 2019, and then they released a video from that, and then a keys player called Ashley Henry saw that video and needed a dep at like 1 a.m. on a gig one time, so just called me up. I was on the toilet. I was like, what is going on? I remember kind of like waking up my parents, being like, I've been asked to play a gig, and they were like, where? And I was like, it's tomorrow. I was like, it's in Lithuania. And they were like, what? And I was like, I need to get the day off college. And they were just like, okay. So yeah, I started playing with him. We did some cool stuff together. That was really cool because it was just kind of like, I mean, it was lockdown hit, which I think put a stunted things a little bit for me, but it was nice because I kind of got a taste of what was to come beforehand. And then like, because so much of lockdown was all online and things, I was then meeting people through social media who I kind of I'm now really good friends with. You know, like meeting people like Tom Ford and Ruben James, all these kind of UK artists just online, from them seeing certain things and just the kind of the word spreading. You know, just kind of, it made me excited for that. And then it all just snowballs. I started uni, was still playing with Ash and stuff. And we did like a live stream for Ronnie Scott's, the club in London, and Alfa missed actually. He saw that live stream, and then just one day I was in my uni flat, and he hits me up and says, "Yo, do you want to jam?" And then, you know, I was like, hell yes. So yeah, like just went and jammed, and then that jam just like kind of led to the end of that being like, hey, festivals are hopefully coming back this summer. Here's like a possible list. Are you down? And then from there, it's just the classic like meet one person and 3 more people kind of, you know, come into your life. So yeah, it was mainly that. I feel like it's a weird mixture of meeting people through shows and through social media, but it's a nice mixture. Just because it's like, I don't know, everything kind of happened quite naturally, and it felt super quick, but it all felt quite organic, and like the people who I've met who are still in my life are now like, you know, some of my closest friends, really. So yeah, it's kind of how that all formed. It's like the UK scene is the UK scene is like is quite small when you reach a certain point, and you kind of do notice that there's like a general circle, and then there's these little kind of side circles at the top, that people are trying to get in. Someone like Alpha's circle is super small, and is like pretty difficult to get into. So I was quite lucky to kind of, I am quite lucky to have been welcomed into that. And then yeah, I've just been lucky to kind of be able to dot between all of these circles and stuff. And then like when I was living in Birmingham, dotting between the Birmingham scene and the kind of like the London scene. But yeah, man, there is a finite number of people here, but everyone all has super similar interests and like kind of similar goals. And quite often or not are all hanging out in like the same place. Cause it is, especially compared to America, such a like small country, kind of like what would be like the New York scene is basically like the whole of the UK, I'd say, yeah, man. Yeah. It's funny kind of looking back on it all. It's all a bit like weird.
Well, I think it's an illustration of what happens when you're over-prepared at just the point in time when you get noticed. And it just so happened that when the spotlight shone on you, you prepared a bunch. And so you're able to showcase your ability, and partly through your abilities and partly through the happenstance of certain people watching, you got on people's radar. And it seems to me also that like from the perspective of somebody like Alfa Mist, the major issue is like talent sorting. Like he doesn't have time to collab with everyone. So it's fortuitous from his perspective that he saw you on the Ronnie Scott's feed, because he's like, oh, and another drummer just came into his life. But that's a really, really interesting and really instructive story.
It's stupid to say that something is all down to luck and like being in the right place at the right time. Like you should always kind of be aware of the work you've put in, and that you kind of like deserve to be somewhere, or else you wouldn't be there. And like at the time, I did acknowledge that, but I feel like I was so young that it was just like every single gig was like balls to the wall. I'm gonna play like I'm about to fucking die, and just like leave everything out on the stage. And it was very much about like proving a point that I did deserve to be there, because I felt like that, and I kind of didn't want people to like, I didn't want people to just think, oh, it's just some young gun that they're just like taking a chance on. It was kind of, especially when like everyone else in my position, is a good like 8-10 years older. It was kind of that, just really trying to assert myself. And like, yeah, man, I feel like I was just taking every single opportunity, saying yes, and just trying to absolutely make the most out of it. And that's all you can do in a situation like that. Is just really fucking like grab it by the bollocks. And it actually got to a point where I remember I had a phone call with Ash Henry, where he just said, he said that to me. He was like, I noticed how you're playing it. And he was like, you don't have to do that anymore. And it was like, you don't have to do that anymore. You've shown that, you're kind of here to stay. And then from that point, that's when I went from playing with him to playing with Alfa. So I went through these couple months of like chilling out a little bit and really finding my voice and my kind of like my flow state properly. And then playing Alfa's music allowed me to kind of really explore that. So it was just a super good maturing process. That I think happened at the right time.
What inspired you to put in as much work as you had to be at such a high level by the Young Drummer UK? Was it a combination of teachers? Was it parent someone who inspired you early, or just part of who you are?
I will always credit everything I have to the people I had around me, and that that is just purely down to having the absolute best parents in the world, the most supportive ones, and also just being surrounded by amazing mentors and teachers when I was younger. I mean, I started playing at 4, and I started playing by like having lessons at 4. And I come from a musical family, and my dad kind of sat me. I remember the conversation. He sat me down and he said, "Drums or guitar? Which one do you want to do?" And I chose drums. And for me, it was just always what I wanted to do. Like I never had an Xbox. I never had a PlayStation. I never had a games console. From the age of 5 and onwards, I would come home and I would play drums for 2 hours. And it's always been like that. And kind of, you start going through the grades, all that kind of stuff. And I met my teacher. My teacher, who would be, I was with him for about 10 years. Amazing player called John Broberg, who's like out from my way. I met him when I was like 9, and we just kind of instantly clicked because the way his lessons worked were just on a what do you want to do kind of basis. And I was always the over enthusiastic student who would just want to come with different things, and we would just go through things and play stuff as well as like do the grades and the actual progression. So me and him just like clicked instantly. And just studied with him and went through all those grades and stuff. And in the meantime, he'd had a student of his be in the final for the Young Drummer of the Year. So he introduced me to that competition when I was maybe like 10, 11. And it became like a yearly ritual from then to enter, because it was always something really good to prepare for. And like, you always wanted the next year to be better than the last. And kind of the entry would work. So it'd be like, you play like a 2-minute solo. So we'd kind of have like a month or so before the entry date of like every lesson would be preparing this solo, building it together. Man, like so much of I think he's probably the reason why I think I loved playing so much, because it was just so non-conformist, yet it was like someone was kind of praising you for doing that, but also like not in like a kind of like deluded way of like, when someone thinks you're, so like, like if so it's hard to describe, like it was the right thing to do with my life, and he was praising me for that, but it never ever felt like a job or like a kind of like a chore to do. It was always what I wanted to do. And I always just said to my parents, there's no plan B. Ever since I was kind of 12, it was like, I want to be a drummer. I feel like I could be good enough for it. I want to be a drummer. I want to, whatever that entails, I want to do it. I want to do my music exams. I want to go to music college and go to university and study it. I want to be a drummer. And I have a Lego figure of myself that actually that my mum got for me for Christmas a few years ago, and it says on the bass drum, it says Plan A, because there's no Plan B. And I just like, I think I went so balls to the wall with just playing and practicing and trying to progress all the time, because I felt like it was my only option. So I just kind of had this mentality in my head of like, if you put your time into something else, you're not going to be able to do it, because you have to put 100% into drumming. So like, I was just playing constantly all the time. And then like, my teacher so John actually studied with Jim Chapin. So like, I was like 12, 13, getting proper technique lessons, and we started to go kind of harder on like the nitty gritties. And then I started having a second teacher at my school. He was sick as well, and he started getting me into jazz, and then like bands like Snarky Puppy, like tunes like What About Me, and that whole album had just come out, and the kind of like the Lionel Lewis videos were like super fresh. So YouTube, I was just watching YouTube, playing drums all the time, just study. And it was just, it was just take and repurpose and just learning constantly. I feel like that's the reason why I was able to kind of get to where I got to, was just because it was life. Like, it's always been life.
What role did playing in bands or playing gigs play leading up to winning that competition? Because, and I might be wrong about this, but I kind of have a mental model that we sort of write all the code in the practice room, but actually playing it on stage forges it to a degree.
I started playing with bands really young. I mean, my dad's a guitarist. So I used to jam with my dad when I was younger. I played my first drum recital thing when I was like 6. I would play in all the school concerts. So funny, my washing machine is telling me that stuff is dry. Hopefully it's dry. It never normally is. But yeah,
theoretically dry.
Yeah. I fucking pray. I remember actually like one school concert I did when I was like 8 or 9. It was a Christmas concert, and it kind of had all these like, girls coming up and singing Christmas carols or whatever. And I sat on the drums and I played Chop Suey, and I smashed out System of a Down. And some guy apparently just kind of went up to my dad and was just like, "Yeah, System of a Down, it's nice." But then I started kind of playing in bands from like kind of 7 or 8. Kind of where I lived, there was like a really good like youth kind of band program going on, where like you had like 2 levels, and you had a kind of like a beginner level band, and then you had like a higher level. And I started kind of like the higher level was like these kind of like 15 to 18 year olds. And I started playing in that when I was 9. And just like, gigging out a little bit. I was just, I don't know, I've always been super confident. So I've never got nervous for something. It's always just felt natural to be on stage and be behind a drum kit. So like I was gigging a lot and always just making sure to be super present and interacting a lot with the musicians, and kind of like just try like, I don't know, even from that kind of young age, just trying to be a good musician rather than just a good drummer. And like the kind of forging stuff in the practice room is 100% true, but every time I practiced, I would play like it was a show, and like I kind of always did that without realizing. And then when I kind of studied a bit with Benny Greb, he said the thing of like, you practice how you play on stage. You don't play on stage how you practice. You have to forge that state of something being like super in the moment, something being a bit raw and unpolished, but also you kind of have to forge that mindset of hitting hard, having a crowd, having that adrenaline. You kind of have to be in that state all the time. So I've always just practiced like I play. And just the way you play doesn't change, just because you're constantly in that state, and then they kind of start to blur. So then at some points the stage can become the practice pad, and that's kind of been the case over the last year. Like not having a constant, like I don't have a practice space to play drums at the minute, and I haven't done for about a year. So that's meant that like sometimes if you get like a line check, that first 10 minutes of the gig, man, that's getting back into the swing of it and like kind of dusting off the chops. But yeah, then it's like you're just figuring shit out. on stage. And then that's great because then every performance is super different.
Another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is the role of improvisation and drummers who are good at it, who value it, sort of owning that. Like, yes, I like to take drum solos. There's nothing wrong with that. I've worked very, very hard to be able to improvise well. So, and when I watched your solos, like on Instagram or whatever, it's clear that you have a lot of confidence and a lot of sort of musical direction and fearlessness around experimentation. Like, it never feels like showing off. It always just feels like exploring, apropos of what you just said. But I wonder if you have some thoughts about the role of improvisation on the drums and how that fits into your scope of things you do and why it's important.
Thank you for the compliment as well. That means a lot. It's so full circle doing this with you when I watched like your videos on Brotherly when I was kind of younger. Like, it's, yeah, man.
Oh, extremely flattered. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, a solo is always a story. It's your chance to express yourself, whatever direction that takes you, and that's okay. Everything has to feel natural, and everything has to kind of what's the word? It has to connect with the audience, and like, you know, I've always been super outward with my playing. I love the kind of the emotional pull that playing music has and how you can draw someone in. And I've always kind of said it, that the way I like to play drums isn't like showing off, but when it's my moment to go, the way I like to play is I like to just, you shut up and you listen, you know, and the way you do that, you just invite the audience in and you just pull around with things. And I think, I don't know, I would spend so much of practice when I was younger, just playing solos all the time. I'd watch drummers like John Bonham play super long 20-minute solos, and it would be like, I want to do that. How does someone keep you captivated for that long? How does someone have an idea progress so naturally, you know? And like, my teacher was really good with a lot of that stuff when we'd prepare like drum solos for the competition entries, or when we'd work on new things together. It would always be in quite like an improvisation based kind of world. And the young drummer stuff was really good because it's a 2-minute solo. So it's how can you showcase yourself within 2 minutes without doing too much, without doing too little. You know, it's all about finding a mid ground on how you can tell a story within this time frame that showcases you as a drummer and as a musician. So we'd always build it, and then from there you find ways of how a groove can build, and how like changing the instrumentation can groove a bit, like can build a groove, and how adding in certain fills and different kind of playoffs at certain points can grow something and adapt something. And then it's just about retaining that concept of moving through different motions, and then just applying that to every single style of drumming, or just every single groove type, every single time signature, every single part of the drum kit. You know, how can I develop something for at least a good 10 minutes, you know? Yeah. So like, I mean, I've just always kind of just been super interested in how everything's a journey. I studied a bit with Dexter Hercules a few years ago. Big up Dex. And he has an analogy of Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk. And you know, you start off just like nice and small, and you start to get a bit pissed off, you get a bit angry, someone punches you in the face or something, you know, and then like, you know, you slowly start to turn green and the clothes rip off, and then, you know, it all explodes. And just a kind of like, I've always just felt like a solo is always a story to tell. And then like, in terms of ideas feeling natural, that a lot of that actually came from doing the opposite, like being in like big bands and stuff, being in these youth big bands and thinking, oh, I'm going to have a solo here, and being in the practice room and over preparing, completely like over preparing a set of chops, or like over preparing a solo idea and a solo structure, and you playing it in the gig and it doesn't sound half as good as you think it was, or it doesn't get the same reception. That kind of like overly manufactured thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of doing a lot of that then kind of just led me into this point of, okay, cool, things have just got a free flow, and if you have the vocabulary and you take your time, things will happen at the right times, and you'll play the stuff you want to play. If you're concerned about not playing a chop in a solo, it's fine. You've got the rest of the gig to still play it. If I'm gonna, like, I always think to myself, I always go, if I have 3 solos in a gig, first one's gonna be like an open one's gonna be a proper story. First one's gonna be super chill, and then there's gonna be one that's gonna be dumb chopsy. But that's all you kind of think about. You just think how you can spread your chops out, but you don't go, I'm gonna play this on this. Sometimes I will think, oh, I didn't play this Justin Brown 5-stroke crossover that I fucking love doing, so I'm gonna make sure the next one I do it. But I don't know. You can't overly manufacture something that is supposed to be a pure expression of the moment. And I just feel like kind of studying with great drummers, people like Mike Mitchell, and kind of hearing him talk about things in a much more musical concept rather than like a technical concept, and then just playing with amazing musicians who are able to do it on their instruments. It's just about what's their mindset like, and how do they do that, and then how can I apply it to the drum kit, so it's a hell of a lot of trial and error, and it's a hell of a lot of kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't, but it's been at a point now for a few years where it's purely just like flow state, and what comes will come, and just always remembering in my head of like, what's the story I want to tell right now? How am I going to tell it? How am I going to make people feel that? Connecting at certain points. I love looking at people. I love seeing what people react to. That's where the kind of the DJ in me comes in. A lot of DJing is about kind of playing what people like and keeping the crowd going along with you. So I love looking out, and I love kind of seeing what resonates and what doesn't. And just letting the hands go, man. Just let the hands go.
Do you remember the first time when at a technique level you could just, as you say, let the hands go, when you no longer had to think about this or that rudiment or this or that shape, but literally your body felt the drums and then it was just off? They would, and you could pilot them a little bit if you wanted, but otherwise they would just do their thing.
It comes in and out. It always has come in and out, like when you're playing things you're comfortable with, it's always like, it's always kind of this thing of like the muscle memory. I remember when I first learned paradiddles, I was like 5. When I could play paradiddles really fast, it was like, oh, and then the hands would just go, and then you get little blimps when you just get super comfortable with something. You get super comfortable in a groove, and the hands just go, I think like properly, I didn't really get. I feel like I didn't really get it until I was maybe like kind of 15, 16, and I'd just been still in this kind of like manufacture mindset. And then when I kind of came out of that, that's when the hands would just start to go more. But I feel like when I discovered certain drummers and just watching these certain drummers fucking fly on a drum kit, that was when it was like, well, the way they're doing that is they're just letting the hands go. And like, I'd learn vocabulary of theirs, but I wouldn't learn it right. I'd learn it wrong, or I'd learn it my own specific way. If like they had a certain chop I'd like, I would just figure it out musically and let the hands go, rather than kind of getting stuck into the nitty gritty. And it was just, and then it just became kind of turning point of like the stuff I played just became way more fluid, and like, you know, the hands would just go for anything. I just discovered drummers like, I think it was like Sharik Tucker was the first. Sharik Tucker was the first. I can't remember what I saw, but Sharik just fucking blows my mind. Still blows my mind, you know. Especially that stuff he was doing in around like 2018, 2019. And then I saw Mike Mitchell's VF Jams. I was just like 15 years. I was just sat there, just like, what the fuck is going on? You know. And yeah, I really got into drummers like them, and JD Beck as well. Kind of, his hands would go in the context of his grooves and stuff, and it's just like, well, how do you do that? So I just got to work, really.
I remember seeing other drummers enter that flow state like more than a decade before I could reproduce it. I remember one of the early memories I have of it. I mean, so when I was in music school in New York, I went to see Eric Harland. The first time I saw Eric Harland live, he was playing with Adam Rogers. So he's got that ability. And then I also saw Antonio Sanchez play a solo with Miguel Zenon, where he just built something up from just like very slow and granular over some kind of thing in 13 too, but where he was like playing in and out of the pulse, and it was absolutely crazy. And yeah, I feel like it was maybe 15 years before I maybe in a tiny way touched what something like that would feel like. But I also think there's an aspect where, like you said, when you first learned paradiddles, you could let your hands go. And I think that touches on something that rings true, which is the cyclic nature of getting something new and interesting under our hands and then sort of becoming bored with it. And I can feel myself doing that too, where I'll work on playing triplets over like a really fast 3 and then just seeing what my hands can do. And it takes like a few months to get a lexicon of stuff you can do without thinking about it. But then eventually, for me at least, like I'll get slightly bored. And so then I'll seek other things to do or other contexts. So it does feel like, I think even though as you get better, you spend more time enjoying what you play relative to those other times. But for you, is there still that cycle of like, this feels killer, and then like, I'm a little bored with this, I'm going to seek something else?
Yeah, I think there always is. I think that's just the beauty of playing an instrument, really, is kind of like, I don't know, finding the discomfort in things that are comfortable, you know. And I feel like when you get to a certain point, that's what kind of becomes the main way of progression, is like, just sit down and play, and then just see how you can push it or try something new and try something different that puts you out of that comfort zone. I don't even think flow state is a comfort zone either. I feel like flow state is just when you're fully just in the moment, and that can have moments of being uncomfortable.
That's true. Yeah.
And like pushing stuff. But I don't know. It's just that mindset of just what you're playing is right, I guess, and just being confident in that. But yeah, I love kind of like finding new pockets to go down, or like, you know, I experiment a lot with my setups and stuff. So it's always about how can something new visually in front of me create something new sonically. You know, like a couple of years ago, I kind of, when I was chopping loads around the drum kit, chopping loads around the toms of the drum kit, and then it became, okay, sick, how can I just play this on like hat, snare, and ride?
I literally just did this past week. Yeah, where I'm like, I'm a little bit bored of toms. Like, let's literally just do between hat and snare.
Yeah, man. And then you go back to toms and you're like, sick. I got loads. You know, So like and then that opened up a whole new wave of vocabulary for me, was then just like implementing things in weird places and kind of like learning a pattern, learning every variation, learning every movement variation, and then learning it backwards. But then just thinking, okay, what's the weirdest thing I can do to something? And like I like to tune my toms super high and like dead, so I could do lots of doubles on them. So I'll do lots of chops that kind of implement moving my left hand around with doubles, because I'm left-handed. So quite a lot of the time I play everything right hand lead, but then I'll occasionally play the odd chop that's like left hand lead. And then it's like super cool how you can kind of just fuck with something in a movement based way to make it different.
Yeah, like changing the home base too, right? Like have snare home base, high tom home base, floor tom home base.
Yeah, sort of thing. Just like if the chop goes down the drums, go up or go sideways, go behind you, you know.
Music
like,
stand.
Yeah, fucking Mason Guidry, man. Hit the stick. I loved it.
Yeah.
I love doing that shit. Yeah. Like just kind of like just finding new ways to experiment with things that kind of don't feel too normal, or like normal in a sense of like, oh, you should know, like what's traditional, I guess, you know. It's kind of just trying to do things in a weird way, and I love pushing myself kind of in those aspects, and then just like, you know, trying a lot of different stuff, kind of like timing wise, and like messing with people timing wise with different modulations and stuff. It's always it's just kind of like, you should never feel bored. Feeling comfortable is the best thing. You always want to be comfortable all the time, but it's kind of just like, how can you play with something, and that kind of making that discomfort comfortable again. It's just a cycle. Is like, yeah, it's constant, and it just comes in new forms and new waves, like all the time.
Well, the other aspect I'd wanted to touch on was the mindset thing with soloing, and I suppose we can broaden this to just performing and like making music in public, which is the paradox of reaching the flow state and not feeling like you need to impress anyone, not feeling like you need anyone's permission to do anything, but at the same time interacting and vibing off the audience. And you mentioned Benny Greb, and I was thinking of him as well, because he's said that it's important for him to be a showman. Like, he eschews the idea that he's an artist. He's like, no, I'm a showman. Like, I want to be liked. Like, I want to please the audience. So I wonder how you reconcile those two sides of it.
Oh, what, in terms of like kind of wanting to play well, but then also please people, kind of that middle ground?
Yeah. So for one thing, I think people have different approaches. Like, so for some people, there are people who just play in a very introverted way. I think maybe somebody like Bill Evans, right? Or even Miles to a degree, right? Or Bob Dylan, like these people who famously turn their back to the audience, where you're just witnessing somebody doing what they would do if it was an empty room. And then there are other people who thrive on the audience interaction. Like Jarvis Oakley told me, like, yeah, he's in flow state, but he's also constantly looking out and seeing like what's resonating. And I heard that from you too. And it feels almost like stand-up comedy or something, like where you're seeing what works, right? So
yeah, it's a mixture. Flow state, unless you are like introverted, I don't think your flow state is ever inwards. I feel like your flow state is just an outward projection of how you're feeling and what you want people to feel. So that kind of that thing of like being in flow state and then interacting with people kind of comes hand in hand, because like my aim is to always like draw people in and bring people along with me and kind of have a conversation where like I'm putting ideas out to a crowd and stuff, and the way that they're responding back to me is is just either through a smile or like some kind of like reaction to like, yeah, you know, it's a conversation in that sense where it's just like you feel that kind of energy, that energy you give out will come back to you. And like the show mini stuff kind of always helps. It's all just about balance for me. I feel like you can swing too hard into a showman aspect and like please a certain crowd, but for me it would never please the right crowd, you know. I'm very much like I've always been like a drummer's drummer, not even in terms of myself, but in terms of like the drummers that I like. I love drummers, but who aren't like take themselves too seriously. Drummers, they're drummers because drummers love and respect what they do, but then the energy that they put out translates to everyone. And it's like, I've always just kind of, I've never wanted to settle for like, just playing like kind of more basic ideas just for the sake of pleasing like a more general audience. You know, the way you bring in people who might not understand what you're doing technically is you just bring them in with your attitude and how you do it.
Yeah, it's more of a challenge, right? Like each thing is valid, but yeah, and I remember talking to VJ Iyer like a decade ago about this, and he's like, yeah, my challenge is to make the average person enjoy stuff that's in like 19.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and it's like I always love picking out people who not like aren't meant to be there, but maybe like say they've come like their boyfriends brought them to a show, or like their mates have brought them along, you know, and they don't like. I love it even when I'm DJing because obviously when I'm DJing I'm performing my own music, so I play a lot of my own music, and I love seeing people's reactions who've never heard it before. Like if a mate's brought a friend, and they're just going what, and it's just all about the attitude and how you put yourself across through your medium. I just feel like if you keep yourself like warm and open and like confident, but not in like a like you're a bit of a prick kind of way, like confident in a good way, and you know, kind of inviting. It always just allows more people to come in. It's this kind of sense that like, especially with the type of music that I play on the drums, like you can kind of get the thing where if you're quite inward, you can seem a bit snobby, you know. It's the classic thing, like everyone will just go, oh, jazz music, you know, snob down at the phone, and it's like
you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, and it's just like that's only because when people are playing it, their attitude is just off, you know, or their attitude is kind of trying to show that they're above people. And I think when you keep yourself on a grounded level as a performer and you invite people in to just experience it with you in the moment, it's super easy to connect with people. It's just about kind of like you put yourself in the audience shoes a little bit, and you kind of you just go along like with the ride, and it goes back to that whole thing of just like letting the hands go and just seeing where the journey takes you, because then you're also just kind of going along for the ride, and you know, you can kind of surprise yourself, and just that kind of that openness is what kind of gets you to connect with an audience. I feel like if you don't have that kind of openness to kind of like discover and create with them, it never translates. Like a lot of the stuff I would do when I was younger, just to be like, I've learned these chops this week, it would never like translate properly, because the way I played it was just to be like, I've learned this, like, you know. Whereas like now it's like, where am I going? Help me out. Or like, you know, just like, oh, you're looking too comfortable, I'm gonna do this. And it's kind of just that kind of just like, yeah, that just mindset to just kind of just like being a collective with the rest of your band and your audience and stuff. It, you know, it's just how you connect.
I can't believe it's been an hour, but that's actually a great note to end on. What do you want to shout out? You have any EPs coming out? Anything you want to
I
direct
completely
people to?
forgot to shout out Minor Symbols. That's disgraceful of me. Massive shout out, Minor Symbols.
Same.
They're very, very fortunate that they took me on kind of back end of last year. Been friends with Joe for a few years now. He's the UK rep. Met him actually at the Young Drum of the Year that I won. He said to me, like, start of 2024, he was like, I've got the job, let's do it, let's make it happen. So shout out Vinyl. Got some cool things coming with them this year. Got a video shoot with them at some point, and hopefully loads of cool stuff to happen with them, which is great. Can't thank Joe and Norbert and the guys enough for the support, really. In terms of my own music, I'm dropping a big showcase mix in May, which will be on my SoundCloud, which will be a big collection of a lot of my own unreleased music, and then some of the live stuff that's to come. And then, back at Glastonbury this summer. Just waiting for the end of the year to kind of roll through, like, gigs wise. It's cool shit en route. Just figuring out what it is.
I love it. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah. I've been looking forward to it. It's kind of like the first like podcasty thing I've done where it's kind of like you can geek out a little bit. Man. Hopefully I didn't disappoint.
No, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I think we got into some interesting territory, and apropos of your approach to music, like some territory that's adjacent to some things I've talked with people about before, but importantly different. And it's been super cool to hear your perspectives on stuff. So I think the people will dig it.
No, thank you, man. It's interesting to see that people kind of think the same thing. So you said about Jarvis and stuff. He's dope. He's nuts.
It's always cool to see the parallels. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like kind of always related to players like that. So it's like, it's interesting to see that the mindset's the same. I remember when I was like studying with Mike, and it was just like, it was the whole thing of like, how do you play fast? And he was like, I see things really slowly. And I was like, same. And he was just like, it's just like pure ADHD. And it's just that, and just kind of like, I feel like when you're studying music, you try and delve so much into the technical aspects of things. And then all these great players are just like, they're just fucking with you, I remember I said to Mike, I was like, bro, when you solo over that Spirit Fingers tune and you play like loads of different metric modulations, what's going on? I was like, you're doing stuff in 3s and 5s, and I've been learning it all and like trying to transcribe it and stuff. And he just goes, I just fuck with them. He was like he'd learned it from Dennis, and Dennis basically had just said that like whenever like Victor Wooten would piss him off, like timing wise over something, whenever Dennis had a solo, he would just go completely off piste, just to like make sure that like that Victor was still kind of in check. And that whole like concept of just like doing something just to fuck with them, and then showing that you're always in time and conscious of what's going on, that for me was just like mind blowing, because then it was just like it's just all musical. So yeah, like just kind of seeing that other people have like, I think, similar mindset things with me about connection and stuff like that. Super interesting.
Great to meet over Zoom, and have a great rest of the day.
Likewise, man. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. All right, take care.